I sat by the bank and watched the water. I deposited a check at the bank. The plane banked hard to the left. Same 4 letters. 3 completely different meanings. Nature, money, tilt. Your brain never even paused. But an NLP system, for 40 years, treated this as one of the field's hardest problems: word sense disambiguation. Video 6 of Lecture 7. Word sense disambiguation, WSD. The task that motivated Miller to build WordNet. The task that stumped a decade of algorithms. And the task that contextual embeddings quietly solved, without anyone throwing a party. In Video 5, we found the named entities. Now we know Paris is a person or a location. Great, but we still haven't dealt with common words that have multiple meanings. Bank, bass, fair, light. Every dictionary lists these with numbered senses, and the NLP system has to pick which sense every time. 5th station on the belt. Today's puzzle. WSD looks like it should be easy. A word has 3 meanings in the dictionary. Pick one based on context. But for 40 years, NLP systems could barely beat always pick the most frequent sense. That baseline was hard to top. What changed? Contextual embeddings, and a story about how a task can get solved sideways. Today's 3 beats. First, WordNet. George Miller, 1995. The sense inventory that gave every algorithm a target. Second, the Lesk algorithm, 1986. Beautiful idea, underwhelming results, and why we still teach it. Third, how contextual embeddings solve WSD implicitly, and what that means for the future of the task. Beat 1. WordNet, George Miller, Princeton. Started in the 1980s, published in 1995. A lexical database where every word is decomposed into its senses. Bank, noun sense 1, a sloping land near a body of water. Noun sense 2, a financial institution. Noun sense 3, a set of similar things like a memory bank. Verb sense 1, to have money at a financial institution. Each sense is called a synset, a set of synonyms with the same meaning. WordNet is huge, over 150,000 words, 200,000 senses for English, and every synset is linked into a hierarchy. Dog is a hypernym of mammal, which is a hypernym of animal. Miller wanted a psychological model of the mental lexicon. The field used it as the sense inventory for WSD BabelNet. From Navigli and Ponzetto 2012, extended WordNet to hundreds of languages. Beat 2. The Lesk algorithm, Michael Lesk, 1986. Beautiful in its simplicity. For each word to disambiguate, look up all its dictionary definitions. For each definition, count how many words in the definition overlap with the surrounding sentence. Pick the sense whose definition has the most overlap with the context. That's the whole idea. 6 lines of code, elegant, and frustratingly mediocre in practice. Why is Lesk mediocre? Because dictionary definitions are short, and the sentence you're disambiguating is short. Most of the time, the overlap is 1 word or 0 words, and when it's 0, you have to fall back to pick the most frequent sense. That baseline is roughly 63% for English, and for decades, most WSD systems couldn't beat it by more than a few points. Beat 3. Then 2018 happens. Peters and colleagues publish ELMo, contextual word embeddings from a bidirectional LSTM. The vector 4 bank next to river looks nothing like the vector 4 bank next to deposit. Suddenly, disambiguating senses is just cluster the vectors or nearest neighbor against known senses. WSD accuracy jumps to 75%, and then BERT jumps it to 80%. This is the important part. The transformer folks didn't set out to solve WSD. They wanted general language models. WSD came along for the ride. Contextual embeddings implicitly encode sense because that's the only way to predict the next word well. Loureiro Jorge and Camacho Collados 2019 showed this explicitly. Nearest neighbor against sense-labeled BERT vectors beats every dedicated WSD system. The remaining hard cases, fine-grained senses that even humans disagree on. Is run, as in run a business, the same sense as run, as in run a marathon? WordNet says different senses. A native speaker says, maybe? A model has trouble because the training annotators had trouble. This is what we called the human ceiling in POS Video 3. Same story. Coarser senses, the ones that really matter, are effectively solved by BERT. When you ask ChatGPT whether bank in your sentence means the river or the financial institution, it answers correctly, essentially always. The gap between the model and a human is now the same gap that's between two humans. Practical picks. If you need explicit sense labels, use fused or contextual sense embeddings. Both use BERT under the hood. If you're building a dictionary application, link every word to WordNet or BabelNet Synsets. If you're using an LLM downstream, you don't need explicit WSD at all. The embeddings already encode sense. Trust the vector. 3 takeaways before the quiz. 1. WordNet, Miller 1995, gave the field a sense inventory. Every word decomposes into numbered synsets, 200,000 English senses. BabelNet extended it multilingually. 2. Lesk 1986 was the elegant algorithm. Count dictionary overlaps. Mediocre in practice. Barely beat the most frequent sense baseline for 40 years. 3. Contextual embeddings solve WSD sideways. ELMo, BERT, and the transformers, built for language modeling, implicitly encode sense. Coarse WSD is solved. Fine-grained WSD hits the same human agreement ceiling. Quiz 1. What did George Miller's WordNet 1995 provide that made WSD a real research task? A. A parser. B. A sense inventory. Every word decomposed into numbered synsets so algorithms had a target to predict. C. A neural network. Or D. A GPU. B. Without a fixed sense inventory, WSD is undefined. Miller gave the field 200,000 senses and a hierarchy. Every WSD system since compares against WordNet synsets. Quiz 2. What is the core idea of the Lesk algorithm from 1986? A. Train a deep neural network on WordNet. B. For each dictionary definition of a word, count how many words overlap with the surrounding sentence. Pick the definition with maximum overlap. C. Use gradient descent to learn sense probabilities. Or D. Consult a large language model. B. Dictionary overlap. 6 lines of code. Beautifully simple, but mediocre in practice because definitions are short and overlaps are often 0. It's still taught because it captures the essence of WSD. Use context to pick sense. Quiz 3. How did contextual embeddings like ELMo and BERT solve WSD implicitly? A. They memorized WordNet during pre-training. B. The vector for bank next to river is different from the vector next to deposit, so nearest neighbor against sense-labeled vectors just works. C. They query WordNet at inference time. Or D. They can't do WSD. B. This is the sideways solved framing. Contextual embeddings encode sense as a side effect of language modeling. Loureiro et al. 2019 showed nearest neighbor against sense-labeled BERT vectors beats every dedicated WSD system. Back to the puzzle. WSD is the task that got solved sideways. WordNet gave the inventory. Lesk gave the elegant baseline. Contextual embeddings quietly won. 5th station done. Now, the last classical station. Once you know each word's sense, you can ask, who did what to whom? That is semantic role labeling. Video 7. Next time, semantic role labeling. Who did what to whom, with what, when, and why? Prop Bank. Palmer 2005. Agents, patients, instruments. The final skeleton of meaning before we leave the classical belt behind. Hit subscribe.